Hey YouTube, I'm Taekwondo Sir doing another action figure review, and today we're having a look at the 50th anniversary NECA Dungeons and Dragons Strongheart the Good Paladin, as depicted on the name on the cover of the box. So I'll get into the write-up on the box first, and then we'll have a quick look at the box. So the write-up for it is: Strongheart is a fearless seeker of justice. Risking his life to ensure that good triumphs over evil, he is thoughtful, kind, and seldom rash, yet never hesitant to punish those who spit in the face of law and order. Strongheart doesn't worship a god, but devotes himself to an ideal, that the world can be spared from evil by those who have enough courage to stand against it. He prefers to fight with his trusty sword steel, and aims to capture and imprison evildoers, slaying them only if they cannot be apprehended. So the write-up on this is exactly the same. That's the one that's on the previous box, but we'll have a look at the back of the box first. So on the back of the box, you can see if we can get the shine off it. It showcases the other 50th anniversary figures in, I believe they weren't released all in one wave, but the other ones that are available. So we have Strongheart the Good Paladin, Warduke the Evil Fighter, Zarak the Evil Half-Orc Assassin, and Elkhorn the Good Dwarf Fighter. So underneath is the Ultimate version figures. So the NECA released these first. These were actually the first versions that were released. So you have Strongheart Good Paladin, Warduke Evil Fighter, Grimsword Evil Knight, Zarak the Evil Half-Orc Assassin, and Elkhorn again, the Good Dwarf Fighter. Difference with these compared to these is the ones on top here are designed, well, they're not designed because they're the same figures. They're repainted and redecoed to look like the original classic LJN action figures of the time. So if I flip the box back around, I'm going to move Mr. Strongheart out of the way just for a moment, because I want to bring in the box from the original release, of which I have. So you can see the differences. So this is how the first version of Strongheart was packaged. It was in actual full box with a window display. And again, the write-off on the back is exactly the same. The only difference it has includes extra stuff. It does showcase Zarak, and then it just showcases the figure with different equipment. That being said, we'll have another little brief look at the box. So another reason why the deco and this plastic bubble style card is used for this is, again, it's a nod back to the LJN release, because the original LJN figures were, even though they weren't this scale, they were 4-inch scale figures, but they were released on card backs similar to that of like Star Wars figures or G.I. Joe figures of the day, back in the day. And I believe this artwork is a reproduction of how the artwork on the original figures box art was, because I do have a recollection of seeing the box arts. I never had one as a kid, but they did have a very similar theme to this. So it is interesting to see that they kind of recreated and try and replicate or recreated that whole awesome look to the characters' original look from the old toy line. So I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to get the figure set up, and I'm just going to get some figures to do comparisons with, in the sense that it'll be other people from the original wave, but we'll have a look at that in a minute. So bear with me, I'll be right back. And we are back. So here is the figure in all his glory. Let me just zoom in on him a touch so we get a better look. So for the most part, he is the exact same release of the figure that came out in that first wave. The main differences is deco, and there's also The other main difference is his equipment loadout. So the equipment loadout on this one is very minimalistic. In fact, it has way less stuff than the original release. But we'll just bring in the tape measure first so we can measure him. Now we'll try and measure him up to the plume. If I just bring him back a bit. So up to the plume of the top of his helmet is the highest point. So behind him, it's around 8 inches. So he does stand around the 7 inch if you count to the top of his head, just a little bit above 7 inches. But because he has that giant plume and the kind of wings going off the top of his head, it does increase his height a small bit. But for the most part, he should fit in well with any kind of other 7-inch scale figures, and we'll have a look-see at that in a moment. So he does have the opening helmet, just like the original, and then he's only 2 accessories. Well, technically 3 if you want to count this as an extra accessory, because it is separate. He has a small dagger, and he has his long sword, and then he has the sheath, which can store both weapons in it, or both daggers and swords. And that is it. He doesn't have any of the other trimmings that the other guy has. So if I bring in, because we'll get this out of the way first, and we'll be using him for comparisons when I have a look at the differences between these two, the major differences. You can see this guy came with the warhammer, the shield. He also came with that same sword, but it was done in a much different deco. This one's just very plain. He has a way different wash. In fact, if I open up the helmet, you can see the skin tones on the faces. Come on, and get you to stand. Doesn't want to stand for some reason. There we go. So if I just center him a small bit, bring him back in. Hopefully he's not going to start tipping over. There we go. So open up the helmet. You can see this has a more lifelike skin paint job for the skin tone, whereas this one, it's based on the old action figure. Again, on the action figure, he did have the helmet, but the helmet was permanently sculpted up. It wasn't a movable piece, so the face was visible on the action figure. Unfortunately, I do not have a copy of the action figure. At one point, I had half the action figure, because if you know the original line, they had an O-ring kind of design with a kind of swivel in the waist, but it wasn't the same like a normal G.I. Joe where you could open the back and swap out. So if the band that held the legs in place snapped, there wasn't really any hope in hell to get the actual legs back on. So a lot of people ended up with half figures. They did change that later on when they brought in the Battlematic stuff. They got rid of they kind of brought in a swivel design for the legs instead of the kind of ball joint type thing with the metal T-bar, and that seemed to course correct a bit. So there is 2 versions for those hunting the original old LJN version. There's 2 versions of Strongheart. There is the old original first version, which has that metal T-bar style crotch part. Ooh. And then there is the reissue with the Battlematic action feature, which had, I believe, a lever on the back, and I think it was this arm would swing up and do a kind of slash attack, or it was this one. I'm not too sure which one, but it was like a sword slash attack. So we'll move this guy off from, actually we'll keep going with the comparisons first, and then we'll go into articulation. So as you can see, it's mainly paint deco on the 2 of them is the main difference, with one glaring difference is the actual capes. The cape on this is a more silky kind of style design with a wire running through it, so you can actually pose it, whereas this one is akin to the original action figure. It's just this kind of glittery cape. It's just a kind of one-piece material. There's no wire to kind of pose it, but it is exactly how it was on the original figure. So it's one of the few parts I remember off the original figure that had this kind of glittery kind of style cape. Obviously it would be a lot smaller on the original figure, but it does look quite cool that they recaptured that look, the kind of old original look. And again, Going through the deco, you can see his armor is a lot more cleaner. It doesn't have the wash on it, because the original figure was kind of just cast in a silver plastic, and then it had the blue accents. So his symbol with the line was just painted blue symbol. Not sure on the original if it had a black. I want to say the line was decked out in black on it, so it could be one part where they kind of omitted it. But like the gauntlets on the sides, the skirting had the blue. His boots were just flat black, just like this. And he didn't have as much detailing put into it. It is interesting to see how much actual detailing there is on the figure. So when you look at the Ultimates version, you can see they went to town when they went with this one. They painted the emblem, the belt buckles, all these kind of plating pieces. They gave the metal a wash and give it a more aged look. Same with the boots. They gave a kind of wash over the blue on the boots, kind of muted a bit. Same with the gauntlets. He even has kind of a metallic gauntlet going into the arm guard at the side. And you have obviously the shield, which the original one doesn't have. And then you have all the arms, and then the sheath for the long blade and the short dagger is all painted. And then on the back you even have the chains. This guy has the same detailing, again just done in that flat matte blue, so it doesn't pop as much as the original, but it is a cool nod to the original old school figure. So let me pop this guy out of the way and we'll have a look at his articulation. So let's have a look at the articulation on this guy. Head is on a ball joint. So if you have the other Ultimates, you know exactly what you're getting with this, because he is the exact same figure. As I said, the only difference is his equipment loadout. So you have his upper shoulder pads are on this kind of slight rubber piece that does get in the way a small bit, but not too bad. His arms can go out that much to the side. There is a bicep swivel. There's a single joint, but with a swivel in the elbow. His wrist swivels, and there's a hinge on the wrist. Now, depending on which, well, it's more on the other one. The two hands that you get with this guy are in the left to right, as opposed to up and down movement. So he does hold his sword. His hands are a little bit on the gummy side, which is handy, because getting the sword into the hand can be a bit wary, especially in some of the older Neca figures where the hands are fairly solid. So if you want them to have both weapons held, you can. I just need to outstretch this hand a small bit. In fact, I actually haven't put this dagger into either hand, but you see how tiny the little tiny dagger is. It is pretty minuscule as daggers go. But then he has the what I would call a long sword or a short sword. I'd say it's more of a short sword than a long sword, but it is intended to be held in his hand. You can have it hold in both hands if you, or not both hands, but you can have it held in either hand if you wanted to. It does give you that option. So if we just get this out without breaking. I always worry about some of the Neca accessories. They can be so small, and sometimes they can be quite fragile, so just something to be wary of. So he does have a double waist joint. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the head is on a ball joint. I did go through the head. In fact, I think it's on a double ball joint, if I remember correctly. Is it on a double? Yeah. So there's one at the base of the head, and then there's a small peg joint at the bottom of the neck where it meets the body. And then for the waist, there is a waist crunch. Now just be wary when you're moving the waist crunch. This could overstretch and snap, so just be wary of its positioning. And then he has an actual waist swivel as well. And again, just as I said, be careful. If you do this too much, these could potentially snap on you, so just be wary of these chains on the back. He has a kick forward that much. It's not the greatest because the skirt piece does get in the way, but he does have it. He does have thigh swivel, which is quite well hidden under this. So he does have thigh swivel. He does have double jointed knees. What's interesting is this piece is a kind of separate, this knee shield or knee guard is a bit of a separate piece. He doesn't have boot swivel as far as I'm aware. Actually, no, he does. He does have boot swivel. It's just that it's not quite a boot cut because it takes this piece of chainmail with it when it swivels. And then he has rocker ankle joints, and then he has peg holes on the bottom of the feet. So you can get him in some good posing, some good battle poses, and he is a pretty good figure. One other articulation point is obviously this helmet. It comes down, the visor comes down over the face, so you can actually see his eyes through it. Let's see if we can do it this way. You can actually see his eyes through the slit and a bit of the mouth guard. So just straighten his legs out a tiny bit better, get him into a better pose, and get him standing a little bit better so I can bring in some stuff to compare him with. So I'm going to push him back a bit. I'm actually going to zoom back out a small bit so I can bring some stuff in. So starting with D&D, we'll bring in one of the other figures from the Ultimate line, which is the Warduke figure. Oop. Let me just straighten his foot because it's kind of bent a bit forward, so he might go falling forwards. So we get you set up. So this is Warduke next to Strongheart. I do love the Warduke figure. I might try and track down the action figure version or the 50th anniversary version, just because the shield looks really cool in that kind of chrome silver. He does have the matte blues, and he has, instead of gold accents, he has like a flat yellow. The only figure I'm missing from the original run-up is Elkhorn, or Elkhorn, the dwarf. I'm missing both versions, so, but I won't bring in Zarek or the other guy just because it's fairly tight for space. But if you have other fantasy style, medieval style figures in the 7-inch scale, like McFarlane's Witcher here, he doesn't look too bad. Obviously the kind of more gritty version, the Ultimate version, would look better, but as the toy version goes, it doesn't look too bad with the Witcher. And we'll bring in one other McFarlane figure, which is actually a DC figure. It's one of the Builder figures. It's the Frost King, I think he's called. I don't know his kind of origin, but he again looks like something that, you know, an evil character that a paladin would fight. So even if you have stuff like the Spawn Violator, now he's taking up quite a bit of space. I'm going to take Warduke out of the way, and we will bring in you over the side, just bring you in the back. There we go. And I'd imagine if you had stuff like Medieval Spawn, he would look pretty good next to this guy as well. So you could probably cross over some action figure lines. In fact, if I just grab this guy off camera, I do have a Spawn figure, which is it Reaper, Grim Reaper? I can't remember his name. He's one of the Spawn figures anyway. Again, this guy wouldn't look too bad fighting this, either fighting or fighting alongside Strongheart. I would imagine he'd be fighting him, not going alongside. Same with Geralt from The Witcher. He probably wouldn't be viewed as being a complete, you know, because he does some questionable actions in regards Paladin. If you've ever played the D&D Paladin class, you know the lawful good style characters can't let anything really slide. There is a grey area that you could argue that things could be misconstrued, but most of the time a paladin will try and even take his own companions down if he thinks they're going against his beliefs. So you kind of have to tiptoe around eggshells with some lawful good characters and paladins and stuff like that. But overall, Strongheart here is a really cool figure. He's a great addition to the Neca line. Now, I picked up this from Uncanny Collectibles here in Ireland. Kim is amazing with her store. She has a lot of, at the moment, she has a lot of Mythic Legions and Cosmic Legion stuff in. But she gets new stuff in. She also gets trade-ins and old figures and stuff like that. So it's worthwhile keeping an eye if there's something that pops up. See, they're always great to just drop a message to see if they have something or if they can order something in. And I do recommend picking up one of these. I'm not sure if she has another one. I think she ordered this one in specifically for me, so I'm not sure if she has another one or if she has access to ordering another one in. But if you want to pick one up from Uncanny Collectibles, I'll put a link in the description below, and I'll put a link to their website, and if they have a listing for this guy, I'll throw the link for this guy specifically in too. But overall, yeah, I think he's a really cool figure. I do want to get some of the other LJN base figures. As far as the Dungeons and Dragons NECA line is concerned, I do not know if they're continuing it, because I really hope they do, and like, I really hope they do continue the NECA line, or the NECA Dungeons and Dragons line, because there were some awesome, great LJN character designs from the figure line that they could do. Now, some of them might be not very cost effective, because they actually had like one or two of the characters was a giant. I think he was like a storm giant, so he would be like that height, or you can't even see my hand, but he'd be like at least 2 or 3 inches taller than Strongheart here. He might like the scale was a little, not all over the place, but the scale was kind of in keeping with the characters that they were designing. So the giants were fairly tall, the dwarfs are smaller, obviously. I think the only one I have issue with is the half orc, which is Zarak. He is smaller than Strongheart. Now, that said, I started playing one of Dungeons Dragons around 3rd ed, and they had kind of retconned half orcs to be kind of bigger, burly characters more than short, squat ones. So the half orcs would kind of be this kind of scale, so they'd be kind of more aggressive, burly characters. And then for the current iteration, I think it's just 5th or 6th edition at this stage, half orcs are now gone. They're not a thing anymore. I don't know why. Possibly because, you know, there's implications of wrongdoing in regards to the creation of half orcs. So it is what it is. But the old school LJN D&D figures were pretty awesome back in the day, and they actually had a playset. Unfortunately, I do not have the playset. The playset was called the Fortress of Fangs, and it was a really cool scale playset for the 3.5 or 3.75 or 4-inch scale figures. And it was like a giant dungeon crawl with lava pits and hidden traps and stuff like that. So it was really, really cool. So we'll wrap up here, because I'm pretty sure you're done listening to me waffle on about Dungeons and Dragons and not saying anything much on the way of figures. But what I will do, as I said, I'll put a link in the description to Uncanny Collectibles, where I picked this guy up. I do recommend picking them up if you're a big fan of even if you just want something cool on the shelf for Dungeons and Dragons and keep them in the box. Obviously, I open my figures, but if you want something cool for the box display, he does display quite nicely. Both versions are actually recommendable, but if you want something a little more light on accessories, so if you're worried about them flying all over the place and getting lost, this guy's probably the better deal, because he only has the 2 accessories that can be stored on him, and you're not dealing with a whole bunch of extra hands or extra smaller stuff that you need to keep track of. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review, and as always, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and thanks for watching to the end if you have done, and I hope you have a great day wherever you are watching this video from. So thanks again, and have a great day.